Romance at a glance. Romance at a glance.
What you say now?
Romance at a glance.
Go ahead, girl.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Romance at a Glance. I'm your host, Bridget. With me, as always, is my co-host, Shawnee. How are you tonight, Shawnee?
Bridget, I am so fantastic because guess what?
What?
We have surpassed 2,000 downloads of Romance at a Glance. Romance at a Glance.
That is a very exciting milestone. If you guys are fans of the podcast and have been with us for some time, you may know that we actually probably are quite a bit higher than 2,000. But I was being very cheap at the beginning while we were figuring things out. We didn't switch to a proper podcasting service until this February, right before the launch of season 2. So I will say that we are probably closer to 3,000, but you know what? We have decided this is our number. So we have 2,000. We thank you all for being here. We're doing it.
We're doing it.
It's happening. Shawnee, do you want to hear where the people are from?
Yes, I need to know.
The people are from the United States. Hello, friends here. They are from Canada, Brazil, Ireland, Germany, France, Spain, Israel, India, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa. I mean, guys, Luxembourg, a bunch of other European countries have been popping in and out. Hello, our friends over there. It's been very exciting. It's very exciting to see where you all are from. Drop us a line on Instagram at Romance at a Glance. Let us know where you're from. Talk to the people. It's just honestly super cool to be able to see that not only are people listening, which is just awesome, but also that you're from all different places. It's such a cool thing that book nerds from around the world can now be connected and can enjoy romance together.
Oh, yeah, it really is.
So tonight, Shawnee, we are talking about Real Men Knit
Yes.
by Kwana Jackson. And this is a book that I, as you know, have been hyped on.
Yes.
I was very excited to choose it for season 3. It's been on my eye. I love the cover. I love the premise. We've been working really hard this season to sort of expand, since this isn't either of our normal genres, we worked really hard this season to expand the types of authors. So not only people of color, but also independent authors, characters of different colors, different pairings, we just tried to mix it up because the Black Dagger Brotherhood, close to our hearts. We love it so much. All a bunch of white vampires and a bunch of white ladies and all male-female pairings, at least in the books, up to the point that we read in the podcast, up to book 11. So, that's not true. Quentin and Blake might be. Except for Quinn and Blake. Everyone else is a male-female pairing.
So I have a slight bone to pick. You just reminded me of this, right?
Please tell me.
And I think a lot of brown people feel this way. Mm-hmm. So you'll have a lot of these artists who are heavily influenced by Black music, right? They love hip hop, they love R&B. However, they won't get involved in Black issues. So when things are going on in the world, you don't hear them speak up. The people that they pick to date and that sort of thing will never be people of color. They won't get involved in the community. They'll just take from the community. And the Black Dagger Brotherhood, I always thought this does that. She always talks about how they listen to a lot of hip hop in the Black Dagger Brotherhood. And she makes so many references to the music that they're listening to, but you don't see very many people of color at all in that series. And I'm like, come on, man. Come on.
Yeah, and why, they marry a lot of humans, so it doesn't make any sense that, even if you consider that, the scribe virgin made vampires and they all happen to be white, I'm I can get behind that. If that's your world, sure, whatever. But they marry humans, and so they easily, Mary easily could have been literally any other ethnicity except for white. You know what I mean? Any of Bella, any of them could have been anything. There's no real reason why the human women who come into the world aren't adding a little bit of color. Because the only people of color really are the Trez and Will, and I was going to say Will I Am.
Yeah.
Trez and I Am.
And I think Manny Manello.
Manny. Yeah, that's true, Manny.
But there weren't very many at all.
Yeah. So anyway, so this season we really focused on it. I'm so excited for this book.
For those of you who are not in the U.S. who may not know, every single major city in the U.S. is protesting right now because of police brutality and police killing unarmed black people for no reason and using excessive force. There are a lot of looters who are taking advantage of the protest. And so every major city now is under a curfew.
I know my friends on Minneapolis are under curfew. I know Atlanta's under curfew. I'm sad because this is just like the shittiest thing in the world. I'm also slightly hopeful because now that these things are being filmed and brought to light, it can actually, like, change can be affected. Because I feel like 5 years ago, even 2 years ago, 10 years ago, certainly, and obviously 50, 100, a million years ago, like, these issues were only known by people in that small community. Not only the black community, but just, like, literally, this would only be known by black people in Minneapolis, really.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't have been known by, people in Atlanta, because that's so far away. So I'm hopeful that it will spark change. But I'm also sad because, spoiler alert, I did not love this book. And I really, really wanted to, because I want more people to be writing their own stories and writing stories in different communities and writing stories. Because I think the more, like, you can identify with humanity in literature and in movies and whatever, like, I think it helps you, or, like, helps, like, me as someone who's white. I don't live in Harlem, but if I can identify with that character and I can love that character, then it makes that character human for me. And I think that that is just a good thing across the board, that people, like, can identify with people of other cultures. And I wanted this book to be a 5-star read so bad, Johnny. I needed it. And I'm so sad that I didn't think that. And I'm wondering what you thought.
Yes. So this week has been a very anxious week. It has been a very sad week. It has been a very overwhelming week. I think anybody, even my, like all of my friends, there's just been a cloud over this entire week for anybody in general. Mm-hmm. Anybody I know who's heavily empathic has been royally fucked this week. I spent the majority of today crying and not knowing, honestly, at this moment, what to do. Because, one, there were no protests near me, but even if there were, I couldn't go because I am immune compromised. So I can't do that. I have to find other ways of protesting, which is like giving money, or a lot of the music I make is specifically for protest leaders. It's supposed to help be rejuvenating and healing for people who are doing that hard work. And sometimes you feel super duper helpless. But I think that for me today, one of the hardest things was that my brother, like the sweetest, most gentlest, loving little kid in the world, but he is 6'2". He's my little brother, but he's like 28 or 29 or something now. But he's 6'2", has very, very dark skin, and he loves to protest. He loves to be like in the thick of things when things are happening. He loves to document it. He's an animator and he's a filmmaker, so he likes to document these things. So, he texted this morning, hey, I'm turning off my location services, because all of us siblings have a location service on when we do things sometimes so that we feel more comfortable that our siblings know where we are. He's like, I'm turning it off because I don't want the police to be able to use that to track me or anything like that. And so I'll text you when I come back from the protest or whatever. And for me, like, my heart just landed in my vagina. I was just like, I don't want him to be there. I don't want him to be there. I know LAPD. I know that, they instigate riots in LA. The police put in people into these peaceful protests to cause violence. They will leave bricks and things like that out trying to get people to use those to throw them. They will use planted people inside of the protest to make it look like the protest is violent. And my brother told me that they marched all the way to Beverly Hills. And when they got to Beverly Hills, they were a peaceful protest. The police started shooting rubber bullets into the crowd. And then they tried to say that the protest got violent when everybody had to scatter and run and whatnot. There's nothing I can do. One, at the moment I'm in Miami. But two, it's like, it's non-discriminate. My brother is just another, black person ripe to be killed for other people. They don't see the value in his life. And I don't trust at all the police to ever see the value in his life. So the stress of this week for me has been, I have not been sleeping. I have been completely pulling my hair out, literally. And so it was really actually, in a way, kind of cathartic reading this book, purely because she put in references that I loved, that felt like home to me, in the book. And the timing couldn't have been, I think, better for reading this book. And even though I'm with you in the fact that this wasn't my favorite book, it still, for me, was great to be reading a book that had representation in it, in this moment. It was the one little bright spot in my week, that I got to hear the character say that she put her hair in a protective style.
I know. That was one of my favorite things about the book, was the moments that were I would never think of, because that's just not the reality of my hair, or not the reality of my skincare or whatever. I really liked all of those. When she's showering and she's like, "Because I am not about to dry my hair all night. This is going to take forever. So I'm not getting any water in my shower cap." And that's so funny, because I never taken a shower my whole life where I didn't get my hair wet, because my hair is so straight. It takes 5 seconds to dry naturally. If I blow dry it, it literally takes a minute. I wouldn't just not consider that, but I loved that detail about the world, about the character.
Yeah, I did. I really did enjoy that. And in general, because we don't have that many authors of color and we don't have that much representation, I ride extra hard when we do.
Yeah.
I'm okay, I'm here for you. How can we make it so that, you're able to keep writing? I want to see more. Let's go. And it's a bummer sometimes, because I think the weight of the world is on these authors' shoulders, because they're almost representing for their race, because there's just not that many people. And we know the romance scandal, that went down, where they weren't picking any authors of color to win the awards.
The Romance Writers of America, yeah, they only had 1 or 2% authors of color who were nominated for the top 10 every year to win their award, which I believe is a grant, as well as you get submitted to publishers that they have relationships with.
Yeah.
I would definitely read another one of her books in the future.
Yeah.
The premise of this book sold me, but also, again, we want to amplify and support in the way that we can. And I can't be out protesting tonight. I have a 7-month-old and she's only breastfed. So I can't leave the house all night. We're donating money and sharing what we can. So I think we should get into the meat of it. But everyone, if you are in a place where that's happening, we hope that you are and have been staying safe, since this episode won't come out for a while. If you do have the means to donate, please figure out what organizations are in your area, figure out what organizations are nationwide, to help people who've been incarcerated because they're protesting, to help George Floyd's family, to help the NAACP and anyone else who's doing the prosecuting for free, to make sure that in the future things like this are not going to happen again.
And this episode, to me, is in honor of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and Ahmaud Arbery, who was killed by vigilantes while he was out on a jog.
I think today we will say in honor of them, let's get into the episode. Romance. at a glance. Romance at a glance.
What you say now?
Romance at a glance.
Go ahead, girl.
Okay, so today we are discussing Real Men Knit by Kwana Jackson. And you listened on Audible. How was the narration?
Oh, awesome. Okay, so I did listen on Audible, and the narrator was Kaylor Lee. I think that's how you say her name. And so she had a really nice, pleasant voice, and I will definitely give her that. I really enjoyed her voice. However, this book had, besides Jesse, he has all these brothers. She did voices for some of the brothers, and then some people she kept in her own voice. And I couldn't tell who was talking sometimes. And so
That's tough. Yeah, because a lot of the scenes, they were all sort of talking in a row, and there wasn't a lot of descriptor in between, even for me reading. So I can see where that would be a problem.
yeah, and it was weird because some brothers, she would make this low voice and talk, whatever. She did it much better than I'm doing right now. But, and then some she didn't. So it was like, two of the brothers had a deep voice and two sounded like her, a woman. And then that was the same voice she also used for the female protagonist here. So I was like, wait, what's going on? There were sometimes I had to rewind and be like, who's talking? Wait, who was talking? Okay, I get it now. Okay, cool. But a part of me sometimes wanted the book to follow along with, and I was thinking maybe if I had a physical copy that it would be easier. But yeah, I did have that one issue. But other than that, she did have a lovely voice.
So this book is not technically part of a series, but I do feel like it could eventually have a book for each of the brothers.
Oh, she's definitely gonna have a book for these. She set them up. She described each one of them. She made them.
She did.
She made them. Each one of them is somebody's different little hot eye candy. Yeah,
Sure, but weren't you surprised that
she didn't give
wasn't
women
anything set up? Yeah, like the only other female character was her best friend, who maybe kind of got set up a little bit. Like Damien could be her sort of thing, but like they had one interaction together, so there wasn't enough where I was like I'm interested in the brothers, but I'm not I couldn't tell you which brother should be next in line, and I couldn't tell you who they should be with, or even what type of woman they should be with.
Well, so
which I was a little surprised by.
So I'm with you in the fact that I was hoping that there would be some other love interests introduced. Doesn't even have to be a woman, just some other love interests.
Oh,
like that.
Valid. I said woman, but it could be anyone.
I said woman too, but that was orbiting the story. They didn't have to be a big part of the story, but somebody who just got introduced. The one brother, Lucas, he was the one I thought had the most potential because I liked him the most, his personality the most in the story.
Yep.
And so it would have been nice to be teased on another book, because there's for sure going to be more books. You don't set up this brother, this guy who has 4 hot brothers, and there's not a,
hot racially diverse adopted brothers.
Yes. And I love the premise of this story. I have to say,
I love it so much.
You said it, and I agree. When I saw the cover of the book, I loved it. The knitting with the Timberland boots, I thought it was super cute, and the colors were so good. And I loved that it took place in Harlem. I loved that it was super diverse. I love that. I always say Black people and Asian people have very similar experiences. We also have similar names. I remember I went on a date with this boy named Jay Kwan, and when he walked in the door, he was Korean, and everybody was like, we definitely thought he was Black. I was like, I know, Koreans have Black people names. I was super hyped for the premise of this story. I am enjoying that these last 2 authors that we read had a unique spin on their books.
Speaking of the author, I have some fun facts because this is the first time we've read her books.
Ooh.
So, before she became an author, she was a fashion designer for 10 years.
Oh, wow.
I know. And she said her 2 childhood dreams were being a fashion designer and being a writer. So, well played, Kwana Jackson. You have done it.
That's awesome. Well, her bucket list is complete. I want to go stalk her Instagram and look at all the fashion.
Even before she started writing books, or as she started writing books, she's always been an advocate for equality and diversity in romance. If you follow the hashtag We Need Diverse Romance, you can see a bunch of her posts on it, and she's always amplifying. I just read an article where she was talking about books that she's excited for, and the next 6 books that she was talking about are all different people of color, and characters of color. So I think that's really great that she's sort of putting her money where her mouth is, because she's not only saying, "Oh, I want diversity," but also she's amplifying other authors' books, which I think is cool. And then another fun fact is that this is her first book written under Kwana Jackson, but she has written 13 other books under K.M. Jackson through an independent publisher. And this book was published with Berkeley Romance. So this is not her first book, even though it seems like it is, because it's the first one under her full name, Kwana Jackson.
Okay, so there's been a trend, because I've been in this audiobook world for a minute, producing them for at least 5 years, at least. And all of these women authors are using their initials like that. LM, J.R. Ward, LM Chutney, I don't know, whatever. And I'm wondering, for obvious reasons, I think, okay, maybe they think they'll get taken more seriously if they don't use their, if it's not a woman writer. If they use their initials, it makes it look more like it ambiguous, so more people are likely to pick it up. But when you're writing romance, I mean, women pick it up, So I don't quite understand why the push, but it was a big push. There were so many authors that were using their initials. I am very, very excited that she's using her name, because why not? She has a badass name.
She does have a badass name. Part of me wonders if it's a way to use your real name without
without your boss finding out.
Right, exactly. Like if I publish a book as B. Chun, that could be any B. Chun. It's not necessarily me. But if I publish a book as Bridget Chun, then everyone in my life is like, yo, that's you. Yeah. So I partially wonder, because K. Jackson could be fucking anyone in America. But Kwana Jackson, there's probably not as many Kwana Jacksons in the U.S. So that's kind of my guess. I mean, I think it's the same reason why a lot of romance authors write under pen names, because they have other jobs or they have families, or historically it hasn't been sort of quote unquote acceptable to write romance, or
that is very true.
Maybe their families don't approve or whatever. But I definitely think that's changing, though. I definitely think romance novels are becoming more mainstream.
Jane Ann Krenz is Amanda Quick. Don't quote me on that. But so I think under one pen name, she wrote historicals. And under the other, she wrote more modern, like spy or action adventure type of thing. Which is funny because as Jane Ann Krenz, I did not enjoy the books because it's not a genre that I really enjoy in general. But as Amanda Quick, I was like, I love you. I love these books. They're my favorite. You know what I mean? So I think it's a way to get people also to read your books when they cross genres.
That actually is really smart, because if you think of yourself as an author brand, a lot of people don't want you to step outside of your brand. So it's a way for you to just be in a different brand. The only troublesome thing, I guess, would be you have to maintain sort of 2 publicity streams. And now in the day and age of social media, 2 social media streams and all that different stuff. But I think that's pretty cool. And you are correct. It is those 2 names. You are correct. So even though we covered it a little bit, I'll give you a quick little rundown of the story. So essentially these 4 brothers decide to keep their adopted mother's Harlem knitting shop open after she passes away suddenly. And the 3 other brothers, or older brothers rather, have careers. One's in finance, one is going on an international dance tour, one is a hot fireman, and the youngest brother is kind of the playboy, creative, but has no real path, no real sort of direction, no real job. And he decides that he wants to sort of finally embrace the potential that Mama Joy saw in him and take over the shop. His older brothers are understandably, I think at the beginning at least, like
Skeptical?
I think skeptical, like, yo, bro, I think this might be too much for you. But they eventually say, okay, we'll give you a few months. And to help him take over the shop, he enlists the heroine, Kerry's help. She kind of was someone from the neighborhood who Mama Joy took under her wing and eventually became kind of like a surrogate mother to her. And she worked part-time at the shop for like 10 years or something like that. Or maybe not quite 10, maybe 8 years. But for a long, long time, it was kind of like the little right-hand person. So it makes complete sense. I felt like and she, of course, has been around the brothers her whole life and has had a crush on Jesse, who's the same year in school as her whole life. So I thought that they made a really big deal out of her helping, but she's been working there, so it doesn't, like, not only did she love Mama Joy, but she also works at the store. So when they kept being like, oh, it's such an imposition, I'm like, yeah, except for that it's her job anyways, and she's loved your mom and is like a part of your family, sort of. So I thought too much. For me, at the beginning, this book was very slow, and too much of that kept happening. It kept being like, oh my God, it's such an imposition on her. And I'm like, it's really fucking not. It's her job. And she loved your mom and wants the shop to stay open. So, like, I felt like that should only have been covered once.
Yes.
Like, I want to make sure
agree.
you're not uncomfortable with this. And when she was like, I'm not, of course I'll do it, then I feel like it should have never come up again.
Yeah.
And it felt like that was the whole book.
Yeah, I agree. I was like, why do they keep referencing this? She loved her. She worked at the store. Everybody knows Mama Joy was paying her to work there, even though she didn't really need her to work there. Like, this is a time to give back to your community. I don't know why we're still talking about this. So yes, I agree. I also wrote, like, the first line of my critique is, this book is too damn slow.
So
it was halfway through the book before they kissed. It was more than halfway through the book before they kissed. I was like, what is happening? And nothing happened in the first half of the book. Like, nothing really happened. It was full of, like, exposition. It was full of, like, so much information about where they came from, how they got there, da-da-da-da. And it was, like, hand-delivered in a way that was, for me, clunky.
Yes.
I wish it had come out more naturally through their dialogue over the course of the whole book versus
like her saying,
it.
do you remember that time when XYZ happened? Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, let's share that memory together. And
let's laugh about it, make it a joke.
I feel like even their, like, the moments that were supposed to feel romantic were them in their minds telling us instead of talking to each other.
Yeah.
I want to hit you with this, Shawnee, and tell me what you think. This book is not a romance.
No.
It should be in either,
women's fiction.
Like, women's fiction, which I don't really understand what that is, but it feels like this might be it. Or maybe, like, if there's, like, a family drama or, like, family fiction or something.
I said women's fiction, young adult, or a family genre. I actually think that this book was not so bad. What was a big point against the book is that it's in the wrong genre. It's in the wrong genre. If this had,
you can't have a romance that's PG-13 fade to black.
Bridget, I literally wrote, did they just fade to black? What the actual fuck? I did not come here to be faded to black. I did not come out here for all this. First of all, and let me say, I want to say to Kwana, that the sexual tension build, I liked the way she was building that tension. I like when she's sitting on his lap. I liked that. Okay, I thought, okay, this has some potential. Okay, it's about to happen. It's about to happen. The next day. What?
Yeah.
What?
Immediately cut to the next. And not even like, remember that one book we read where it cut to the next day, but then they like spent the day remembering it?
Yes.
So it was like annoying that it cut to the next day, but at least you got some tidbits of what happened because they like remembered the lips on the skin and then they remembered the blah, blah, blah. And you're like, okay, that's kind of sexy that they're like heated glances and they're both remembering. So now they're both frisky times going to happen again. But yeah, this was just, it just didn't feel like a romance, which unfortunately reflected in my review because, again, if you're telling me it's a romance, I'm expecting a romance. And I definitely didn't feel like, certainly in the first half of the book, maybe even in the first 2/3 of the book, I didn't feel like it was a romance.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like that happily ever after at the end was really earned by either character.
No. Well, I mean, for me, there was so much that was missing. I said that this book felt like a prequel, right? So, like, when it ended, I was like, wait, the story's done? Like, that's the end? Like, it didn't make any sense that that's where it ended. It didn't seem like a full story. It seemed like a few chapters before the real story should begin. And I didn't think that they earned it. I didn't think that there was romance. They didn't date. They didn't do anything other than fuck, which we didn't even get to see because it was faded to black, you know? And I was like, wait, what's going on? They just had the dynamic in the shop. And that was a whole lot of nothing.
And they didn't even get into, like, and, like, they could have made the shop and, like, them getting sandwiches, like, they could have made that the romance.
Yeah.
If while they're in the shop, they talked about Mama Joy, which they never talked about Mama Joy. They never shared. At multiple points in the story, each one of them was in their own head remembering how sad they were. Like, one of the times he saw her crying and he, like, didn't go in and comfort her. But like, they never talked about how much they loved her. They never talked about her laugh. They never talked about how she ran the shop. Like, they didn't bond over that, which I thought was like a real missing for me. Because if you're going to date someone, like, of course you would be sharing about that. And then, like, they didn't share about their hopes and dreams. Like, all of that quote unquote conflict, which there really didn't feel like there was any, but like the conflict of the story was that neither of them were honest about their feelings. Like, she never said, like, I've had a crush on you since I was 14 years old and you used to sit next to me while we knitted. And like, those were like the best moments of my youth. Like, and now that you're here and you're a man, like, I'm afraid because you've been just fucking around with all these chicks, and like, I don't think I can do that. Like, I think you'll break my heart. He never said to her, like, my mom dying made me realize that you're like, I don't want to do that shit anymore, and I want to be the man she thought I could be, and blah, blah, blah. Like, none of that ever happened. Like, in their minds, they said, like, I'm not even convinced she wanted the job at the center.
Yeah, I felt like she just took the job because that was what she's supposed to do. Like,
because it was
adulting.
offered.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I wrote down, I think Kerry's about to get stuck with a fuck boy. Like, I actually didn't feel any chemistry between these two characters.
At all. No chemistry.
He didn't inspire any sort of lust in me. He didn't.
Nope.
Like, I was just like, oh, this is an immature boy. And nowhere along the line, other than him taking responsibility for the shop and saying he wants to do it, that was the only moment, that was the only thing of growth, really, that I saw in him. And I wanted to see more of his process. I thought so much of the book was one-dimensional. There was all this talk, all this, like, the front-loading of information in the beginning of the book, and none of it helped create dimension for the characters. This book did one thing that I just greatly dislike, which is it puts in a one-dimensional or a zero-dimensional villain. Okay? And so I think her name was Erica. You know, the girl who's after Jesse. She comes in and she's just full bitch mode. You know? Full bitch mode. But it reads as a stereotype and a caricature. It doesn't read as a nuanced person who is coming in with an underlying jealousy. Maybe she's trying to be polite, but there's a passive aggressiveness to it. Yeah. She was just
or like she wants him and they fucked a few times and she's like, hey, your mom died and I want you. And he's like brushing her off and she's like hurt and confused and overstepping. Sure, people do that all the time, but I agree 100%. She felt so unnecessarily catty.
Yeah.
And like immediately is mean to Kerry, but Kerry lives in the neighborhood. She lives in the neighborhood. Like, if she's been around the shop before, she would know Kerry works there. So, like, it didn't make sense. Like, she didn't, like, walk in on them hugging because they were thinking about Mama Joy. She didn't, like, see him, like, brush something off Kerry's shoulder. Like, she didn't witness anything that she should be jealous of, I didn't think.
It was just, I was like, why is this, and I think that it's a missed opportunity. People come, they can be jealous, they can be possessive. How do they show that? How does that actually manifest in real life? Nobody, look, as somebody who's a blunt individual, nobody else says what they're really thinking. The reason people I think are my friend most of the time is because I say exactly what I'm thinking. But I encounter people all the time who, especially like my sister, we joke about this all the time. She will tell you everything but what she's actually thinking. And you have to decipher through the bullshit to get to it. So if you have this character who wants this guy and is feeling some type of way, how would she show that? What is the passive aggressive ways that would come out? What are those little nuances of language? And I think that's what makes sophisticated writing. I think that for me, the writing of this book did not feel very sophisticated, and it felt clunky at times because of that.
Yeah, and he didn't, in terms of like your point about him not moving you as a character, he didn't say to her, hey, like, this isn't gonna happen. Like, I know we had sex. I know that I like sort of took solace in you physically, but like, I'm just not interested in you as a potential partner or whatever, or I don't want to continue this, or however but like, he doesn't ever, like, he's like, well, maybe next time, wait for me to call you back. And I'm like, cool, but that's not telling her I'm never going to call you back.
Yeah.
And then, like, that brings to mind in the future so the shop is opening and they're getting a whole bunch of bad comments on their social media campaign from all of these women that he's like fucked around with and clearly like slighted and wronged, because they're all like petty enough to comment negatively on the relaunching of his dead mom's shop. And he goes on sort of like an apology tour and talks to, like, apologizes for his behavior, explains what's happening, invites them to the opening. And I thought that was a nice moment of growth, that he acknowledged, A, he was wrong, went and apologized, invited them to the shop, which I thought was nice. But I didn't like that the reason that came about wasn't him all of a sudden realizing, like, oh, the way I feel about Kerry is different. I don't want to hurt her. I realize I hurt all these other people, and I need to fix that before I can start with her. Yeah. It was like, oh, this threatens our business. And I was like, well, it's not a reason. It's just like, in a romance novel, not the reason. Like, I want the reason to be not like fully about the heroine necessarily, but I want it to be more related to her for sure. Like,
my partner said to me one day, he was like, hey, I need to take the weekend to be by myself, right? So, like, and we do this all the time, because I'm a person who likes to go radio silent. I might need 3 days not to talk to anybody in order to, like, recharge my battery. So I'll tell him that. I'll be like, you know what? I need a couple days of radio silence. So he said to me, like, hey, I need the weekend, just radio silent. I just got to process some things. Come Monday, I find out, we talk, and I find out that he spent the weekend, like, basically coming up with a plan for having me in his life. He's like, to this point, I've been a boy. I've been doing boyish things. I've let things slide. I've not been on top of my finances. I've not been on top of this. I've not been on top of that. I've not been on top of my taxes. He's like, and I was so shocked. I was really shocked as he was talking to me. He's like, you're a grown-ass woman. If I want you in my life, I need to make sure I have these things in place. So I had to take the weekend to get myself mentally prepared and make the list for all the things I need to change in order to make this work. And I was like, my nigga. I was like, my dude, I mean, how, I didn't even know what to say to that. It was like the sexiest thing anybody has ever said to me ever in life.
I thought that's beautiful. I would have loved for Jessie to say something like that to Kerry. Like, when she's like, because she says, like, really late in the book, I thought, maybe it was only like halfway through, but it felt kind of late. She said, as if a runner like you could ever hold or be held down. And he's like, I think it was pretty late in the book, and he's like trying to like he's kind of trying to like tentatively tell her that he's interested. I believe they had already at least made out at this point. If not, I think they had already had sex at this point. I'm pretty sure. And
Yeah,
first of all, harsh as fuck. not true, just harsh.
Yeah.
And secondly, he didn't, like, not only did he not defend himself in that moment, but he also didn't come back to her and say, like, you know what, you're right. I haven't been wanting to hold anyone down. I haven't been worthy of being held. But I want that with you. I want, all these things. And, like, I would have swooned. I would have been like, oh, look at this. This is all starting to happen. And it didn't. And I don't know. I just wanted more Shawnee.
Yeah, I wanted more from this story too. I know that some people like a slow burn. I don't like slow burns. However, I will accept them if what you give me at the end of it is a 10 out of 10. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I felt like it was all this build up, right? And then finally they get to that their little sexy scene or whatever. And then I got nothing out of that. I got very little out of the romance. I thought it would have been really mature of Jesse to take her on a proper date, set up a proper date, that sort of thing. I don't really know what to do sometimes with stories where nothing happens. Like, where there's no real conflict, there's no real... I didn't think they had a real conflict. I didn't think that they had something driving them apart, really. Nope. It felt very thin at best.
Very thin.
And
I thought, like, their general lack of communication and just, like, her, like, refusal to... Like, it was hard for me to root for her or for the romance when she wasn't rooting for the romance or herself. So she was constantly saying, like, well, you and your brothers. Well, like, she never, like, wanted to, like, she never risked her heart or her... And I, as the reader, never felt like her heart was in it because she never told, like, I guess in her mind she's like, oh, but I really like him, but it's like, but do you? I don't know. I wanted to, I remember this movie I watched, Feast of Love, which came out in, I don't know, I was certainly in college, so 2006, 2005, something like that. And there's a scene where two people who are early 20s are laying in bed, and he asks her, what are you thinking about? And he's, like, spooning her from behind. They just had, like, super hot sex and, like, are both beautiful and, like, sweaty. And he's like, what do you see in the future? And she's a little embarrassed at first, and she, like, turns towards him, and he's like, tell me what you see when you think about our future. And she turns back away from him. It's a beautifully acted scene. And she says, I see a big house with a staircase going up the middle and a bunch of kids. And a tear rolls down her face. And it's so beautiful because the vulnerability of telling someone, I see a life with you, is everything. Like, that's the romance. That's the moment. It's like this, I mean, like, the character saying, like, I want you and all your flaws and all the goodness and all the badness. Like, I see that going somewhere. Like, that isn't here. And that I missed because I felt like the premise was so cool. And I really saw, or at least I thought I knew what was going to happen in the book, Johnny, because she has an art therapy degree. Mm-hmm. They do art at the shop. I was like, oh, well, logically, he's going to convince her that, like, why would you work at this community center? Like, your passion is art therapy. Like, open that here. Do that here. Have that be a part of the revamp. That, like, you're helping heal people in the community. That little boy who was having trouble with bullying, I was like, that's going to be our first person. Like, I was like, okay, I love this. They're going to, like, work together.
They're going to work together.
So they're going to be, like, a pillar of the community together. They're going to be...
That would have been
like, they're
so
both gonna, like,
cute.
He's finally gonna say, like, it's not me and my brothers, it's you and me, it's us. Like, what are we gonna do at the shop? Like, I wanted that vulnerability, I wanted that togetherness, and I never felt like either one cared enough about the other person to risk anything.
Yeah.
And so I never got invested in them as a couple.
It's weird because, so I definitely hear that. And that was a big part of the book where I was like, but in real life, I've experienced that. I mean, I feel like up until very, not that long ago in my life, it was very hard to be vulnerable. So when people were talking, would say stuff, I'd be like, and my partner now always talks in the we. When I first got sick and I was like, I felt super bad. My self-esteem took a hit because I was like, yo, he didn't sign up for this. I did not know this was going to happen. And I didn't no. He's like, well, one, thanks for telling me this. Cause I was like, look, I'm just going to tell you, I have this huge insecurity right now. And, he was like, one, I know that this is hard for you. Thank you for telling me. But two, he's like, now we have data. We're getting data, figuring out what's going on, and then every time I would have a doctor's visit, he would always say, so how was our doctor's visit? Or when are we going to the doctor next? Even though he wasn't going to the doctor visit with me, but he would always say it that way.
He's gonna be one of those people. If you ever decide to have a kid, he's gonna be like, "We're pregnant." You're gonna be like, "Go fuck yourself. I'm doing all the work. You're doing fuck all. We might be having a baby, but I'm pregnant."
But for me, it was always hard to make that presumption, especially without a real conversation. So when we started having conversations about the future and things like that, and making plans, then it felt for me more natural to be like we. But it took me a minute to get there.
Sure, but you have to have those conversations.
Yes.
Like they didn't have any that's my point. I agree with you. Like it's so hard to be vulnerable. It's so scary. But you have to say like, yo, like one day I imagine our beautiful little children running around the store learning to knit. What do you think? Like I don't know.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something funny about the book that I had to reread a chapter about?
Yes.
So when they first were introducing her with the brothers, at one point there was kind of like a weird vibe in the writing, at least the way I was reading it, between her and Lucas. And then obviously, like, she had already said, oh, I have a crush on Jesse. So at first I was like, oh my God, did she have a childhood crush on Jesse? But Lucas is going to be the brother that's for her. Because that totally has happened before. And I was like, oh, okay, like, I see where that's going. That's cool. And then I was like, oh, wait, like, is this a menage thing? Because, like, she has, like, a really separate but interesting relationship with Lucas and Jesse. And then I was like, and then nothing ever came. There was just that one chapter, and I was like, oh, apparently I was just reading. I was trying to, like, make the book more exciting than it was. And I always want there to be
Bridget,
menage,
okay, so I'm so glad you said that because that is exactly how I felt. I was like,
really? Okay,
yes.
good.
So they introduced Jesse, and I was like, okay, I'm going along. And then Lucas comes, and he's way more interesting to me. Their little, thing that their little banter and whatever was way more interesting to me. And I was like, oh, even though I read the synopsis and knew it was Jesse, I was like, oh, maybe it's Lucas. Like,
I know.
I was way more excited for their pairing than for Jesse and her pairing. And at the end of the day, I didn't buy it. I did not buy their pairing.
I did not buy it.
I see them breaking up the chapter after this book ends.
And then she'll date Lucas.
Maybe she'll make her rounds to all the brothers. I see a menage coming. Yes.
Yeah.
Kwana, right? A menage.
Okay. So when Lucas got upset that so one of the scenes I thought was funny was when Damien and then the rest of the brothers catch them in bed together after their first morning together.
Oh, yeah.
And they come in and Damien's like, my good sheets. And the rest of the brothers are like, Noah's like, what's going on? Oh, hey, guys. Like, and Lucas is like upset. And I don't feel like that loop ever closed for me. Maybe I just like missed it or something. But like, was he supposed to be upset because he liked her? Or was he supposed to be upset because he was worried Jesse was going to fuck up the shop, and like she wasn't going to be sort of part of their quasi-family anymore?
Yeah. I mean, I assumed that it was the latter.
Jealousy?
That,
oh, no, you assume it was okay, sorry.
I assumed that all of them were upset because they had said it, that Jesse was, I just chalked it up to that.
Okay.
But I think for them it showed immaturity in him. He's trying to say, "Hey, I'm so mature, I can run this shop," and then he's banging the only one person who was helping them stay afloat in this process.
I know. You know what would have been a cool, or more like sexy, more tense-filled thing would have been that he doesn't, like, on purpose doesn't sleep with her. Like, she's, like, clearly interested, they're vibing, and they keep having that moment where, like, they're right about to kiss, and he's like, I can't, like, the shop's really important, like, I promised my brothers, and, like, both of them are, like, the sexual tension is just, like, they are mounting.
That's a great idea, Bridget.
And then
idea.
They have, like, the big opening and the grand opening, everything goes great, and they're having, like, some drinks afterwards, and then,
I think that's a great idea because we could have got more romance earlier in the story.
Yep.
Would have been so the slow burn would have felt even better.
Would have burned.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like it was
really
just
burned.
slow. I didn't feel like it was burning me.
Yeah, I didn't either. It was just slow. But I felt like but that would have been really great. And that way you could have got a little bit of romance and stuff in the beginning. I think a good growth moment would have been for him to be like, "Oh, I'm serious about her. She's not just another person that I'm fucking. Let me take her on a date. Let me show her some romance. Let me do some sweet things for her." Like you said, like convincing her also, like, hey, to be like, hey, you have the run of the space here. If you want to do art therapy, if you want to start your own thing, if you want to be an entrepreneur, Lord knows Black women are the highest % of entrepreneurs out there in the market. You know what I'm saying? So like, I thought that
he never asks her what she wants to do. At least I don't remember that happening. He never says, like, what do you want to do? He just, in his mind, assumes she doesn't want to work at the shop anymore and that he's holding her back. He never says, like, hey, do you want to keep working here? Hey, do you, like, love it here? Like,
yeah, I just felt they didn't have important conversation, you know? And then you cannot have a relationship, that can sustain the amazing race if you don't have good conversations. And those conversations, I think, are sexy. I think that they are world building. I think they allow me as the reader to feel like these characters are invested in each other because they've taken the time to have, a real conversation.
I just want to talk about a couple things that we did like before we move into the ratings. The little old ladies, I would have liked to have seen more of them, or like hear them talk more, be more a part of the story. I thought it was cute that they all like donated money to help save the store. I loved that they like knew about the loan right away, and that they were like clearly like those little old ladies who just like know everyone's business and like give zero fucks because they're old and just do whatever they want. I love them. I always think those are like fun characters and fun people to know in real life. What were some other things that you really liked about the book?
So I really liked that the book took place in Harlem. I loved that. I don't think I've ever read a romance novel that took place in Harlem. I loved that it was hot men, knitting. I loved that, I just liked that it was a cute, sweet story, and it showed brown people being how we are, regular. I remember a woman telling me like, "Oh, okay, I live in a town where we just don't have any Black people." She says, "So the only thing I know is from what I see on TV." And I'm like, that is dangerous.
That's not good.
That is highly, highly dangerous. So I love just seeing this sweet little, thing. This a little bit reminds me of my brother. My brother has, his girlfriend is Japanese. And they're like the cutest little sickly sweet little love, fest. They're both drummers, and the things they do together are just so cute. And this story kind of got me in the feels like that with like the premise of it, and whatnot.
What did you think about the ending? Where he goes to her school or her community center or wherever she is with his brothers and essentially like grand gestures her. Let me tell you what I think first, because everyone, you can't see Shani right now, but she just sighed about 10 times and she's like trying to figure out how to put it in where. I'll tell you what I think. I think the more beautiful grand gesture for her character would have been if he helped Errol become sort of like the big man on campus by showing that knitting is like hot. All the girls would love them because they're like super hot, tall, you know, one's a firefighter, one's a, you know, they're all these like sexy dudes coming, and they're all like, if they like knitted and like while he was giving the speech, the other two were just knitting, and all the girls were like, and then they realized that Errol knows how to knit. So now Errol is like the sexiest little boy for all the little girls, and those other two douchebags who were like bullying him got put in their place, and he didn't bring any attention to her, and he did it not to like force her to acknowledge him or like force her hand, but to like he knows she's been worried about this kid all summer or for the last few weeks or whatever. I'm going to say that again because I whacked my mic. He knows that she's been worried about this kid for the last few weeks, and so he comes because he cares about that kid and he cares about the community. And then she then could like come back to the shop after that and be like, I realize you've grown. We belong together. Let's bang every day.
For me, there was some things that were left kind of wrapped up, or they didn't even need to be wrapped up. It just, the story ended at a spot to me that it didn't feel like an ending.
I agree.
And so that, I think, was the hardest part for me. I literally did a double take as I was listening to my phone. Like, when it ended, I was like, wait, what? Mm-hmm. Wait, that's it?
Yeah, it's almost like they got to a certain point and the editor was like, well, you only have 3,000 words left, so
wrap it up.
Wrap it up.
Yeah, so that's how I felt. I did think that they set it up to help that little boy. Like, it felt like they were going to help him in that last scene. And then...
And it, like, kind of happened.
It was like, meh. I mean, I felt like they could have bossed him up, and they didn't. And I was
like, he could have been like, if any of you are thinking about knitting, talk to Errol. He's one of our best knitters, even though he clearly is not great at it. Who gives? They could have just,
yeah. Something, anything. But it actually I felt like they more like kind of let it down. Like, so that's how I felt about the ending.
And what happened? So, like, he goes, he kisses her, they're going to be together, but, like, is she going to work at the shop? Is she going to take this full-time job? Is she going to do art therapy ever? Like,
yeah, I was unclear if she was going to take that job and continue working at the shop. If she was going to continue, if she was going to move back home, is she going to keep living with him? Is she going to, like, what's happening? I needed more information, you know? And I felt like they wasted a lot of words at the beginning of the book when they needed to be at the end of the book. I'm actually very interested to read more from this author, because even though she wrote a bunch of books under a different name, she's still very much a new author to me. The other books are not that, they're not very long, they're not like, you know, I still think she has a lot of growth opportunity, and I can tell she has good ideas. So I think that's the premise. Right now, I'm so interested in reading stories that are just have a different spin on ideas. I'm tired of reading the same old stories over and over and over again. The fact that some of these authors are creating new scenarios that I haven't read before, off the bat, interests me, and I want to see where they're going to go. I do think, I think this is the first book that she's ever put out that has a major imprint, that she has a bit of a machine behind her. I don't know how big the machine, but, you know.
It's Berkeley romance.
So she's got a bit of a machine behind her. And so I just kind of, once you have a machine behind you, I have different standards for what I expect out of a story and your book. And I do feel like, I mean, I don't know how many people read this book before it gets out to the people. But I feel like, you know, a couple good reads could have told you that there's not much going on in this book.
Well, it definitely felt like I mean, I don't know whether it was rushed. I don't know what the story was, but I definitely felt like an editor at a major publisher should have minimally smoothed the sort of clunkiness and the tempo of the book.
I had a conversation with my sister a couple days ago as I was reading this. And I was talking to her and I was like, oh, it hurts my heart. Just as a black girl to one of the few black authors, it hurts my heart to not like this book. It just does, you know? And never for a minute was I like, oh, I'm not going to review this how I feel. But my sister, I think, thought that I might, you know? And so she was like, Shawnee, you got to give her a review like anybody else. And I was like, I know. She's like, no. She's like, all these people out here, she's like, all these white authors, they submit their shit and they get ripped a new one and they become better authors. She goes, sometimes to fill quotas and things like that, people just want people of color and they're not telling them where they can grow or have growth opportunity and that sort of thing. So stuff gets by and whatnot. And I've seen this in action so many times. And I don't know if it's for that reason or another, but I don't think anybody's doing her a service by not telling her. I think that she has the potential to be a dope-ass writer, you know, and so I was like, okay, well, here we go. Once you have a machine behind you, we going in.
Yeah, we're going in. All right, well, before we go in on the full ratings, we are going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with our hero and heroine ratings. All right, Shawnee, hit me with it. What did you think about Kerry, our heroine?
I gave Kerry a 2. I was sad to give her a 2. I did like that she had a little bit of a backbone, that she had her own, like her own stuff. She had her own apartment. She had her own job. I love that she was loyal to her community and that sort of thing. But that's kind of where it stopped for me because I honestly didn't feel like I knew enough about Kerry really to give her a proper rating. Like I felt like she was an incomplete character and as such was almost like, you know, a caricature in a way. Like I needed more to fall in love with Kerry.
I agree. I gave her a 2 also. And my biggest thing was that it was hard to root for me to root for her when she did not believe in their love or the potential of their love either. Because again, this is a romance. I mean, if she was just a character in a book, maybe she would have gotten a 3, maybe. But to your point, like, I still don't know. Did she want that job or not? It kind of feels like no, but she took it anyways. And it's not like she took it because she had to, because she could still work other places and she had the art therapy degree. So yeah, anyway, so I gave her a 2. I gave her a 2 also.
Okay, what did you give Jesse Strong?
I also gave him a 2. I just feel like his descriptor had me. Like, if you looked at the cover of that book and the description of that book, I would have been like, 5 stars. That's a 5-star book for me. 5-star boy. But he just felt so flat. He never, like, in his mind, he, like, never feels good enough. He doesn't feel like he deserves any love. He doesn't feel like anyone loves him. Which, like, I get because of his childhood trauma, and then he was, you know, in foster care. But then he was adopted pretty young because he's the youngest of the brothers. I think they said he was 8. And, like, Mama Joy, he even describes throughout the book that Mama Joy was the person who understood him, that she loved him no matter what, that she believed in him and his creativity. So it's, like, what I was being told about his, like, insecurities in his mind, but then what he was also telling me about his experience were not matching up. And so that, like, just got to be a lot, like, over the course of the book when he, like, clearly kept getting more clear evidence that he was loved and that he was worthy and did have good ideas. Like, I don't feel like he evolved the way it could have. I mean, I liked that he made amends, didn't like the reason that was because of business. I just didn't like that he was not willing to talk to her honestly. He wasn't willing to be the vulnerable one. Even when he knew she was hiding her feelings from him, he wasn't willing to be the one to like lay it out and be like, look, I was a fuckboy, but here's why I'm not going to be, and here's my actions, and like, it's okay if you don't believe me at first, but I'm going to prove it to you. Like, he never came up and did any of that for me, so he was a 2.
I gave him a 2 as well. Oh man, we match.
Are we matching?
Are we matching today?
So rare.
Snap.
So rare for us.
So
That's
rare.
exciting.
I give him a 2 as well for all the reasons that you said. I thought Jesse was like super blah. I thought that one of the things that always gives me a point off, and this is probably just from my own personal experience and my personal bias, when guys don't shut things down hard, they lose a point for me. When homegirl was lingering around and circling or whatever, like a vulture, that should have been shut down hard. And if he was really serious about Kerry, and he really wants to be with Kerry and he likes Kerry, then like, and she's there when the girl is there. I want you to
shut that shit down so hard.
Kerry needed to see him.
Kick that girl out.
Kerry needed to see him. Shut it down.
I agree.
And so, like, for
especially
me,
when she caught them together at the beginning, like he needed to the next time be like, "That's never gonna happen again. I'm so sorry. Like, never want to see you again. Get the fuck out." Yeah. Like, why couldn't she have come? He could have turned her away, but then gotten drunk by himself because he was depressed. So she's still cleaning up after him. He's hungover. But, like, at least he didn't, like, fuck a woman that she has to, like, watch walk out of there.
Yeah, it's weird. It always goes against me feeling like the connection between the main characters when there's somebody else in the story who was actively sexually involved with that character. I know that's real life. People do it all the time.
Unless, like, he's a rake and that's, like, part of the trope and the character, which obviously this was not really that, then I'll forgive it, especially in like a historical sense. Yeah. Because then I expect that person to have the charisma. I expect them to be like seducing that woman. I expect that character to like put the game on hard. Like if you're a rake and that's who you're telling me, like if he's a playboy, then like why isn't he fucking seducing this shit? I want to hear him.
That's what I'm saying.
I want him to like whisper in her ear. I want him to like spool the yarn around her fingers in like a fucking ghost ass sexy way.
Listen, Bridget. I mean, so I have a lot of brothers, right? And I have one brother who legitimately, he's a narcissist. Like you can't convince me otherwise. But when we were in high school, he slept with everyone. He got every girl to fuck him. And they all knew each other were fucking him. And it did not matter. He had such a suave to the way he spoke. And I remember coming out of my bedroom at night and he had snuck girls into the house. And there was a girl waiting in my hallway who I was in class with. So I walked out. I was like, Jessica? And she was just standing there. And it turns out she was just waiting her turn in the hallway.
That's like, fucking crazy.
And my brothers were in there. My brother and his friend from school were in there doing what they was doing. And I just remember thinking like, what the hell? But then what really blew my mind was one day he's sitting in front of me and this girl calls him and she's mad because she finds out that he's sleeping with all these other girls. And I can hear her side of the conversation. She's cursing him a whole new one, Bridget. And he just suaved that conversation so well that by the end of it, she was begging him to get back together. And I watched this happen in real time. It was like, what the fuck? What the, in the actual, like, it blew my mind. With Jesse and somebody who has a lot of brothers and this being like all these boys in this house, like, there's so much opportunity for some suavecito. Like, there's so much, so many moments where I'm like, he could have put it on her. You know, and you're right, because in historicals, I will allow, like, if it's a rake, a reformed rake or whatever, that sort of thing, I will allow it. But usually it comes with some really hot, like, there's a purpose for him being a rake. He's good at what he does, you know, that sort of thing.
And he knows how to give her, and you know he knows how to give the pleasure. Yeah. And she's going to get the pleasure.
But even, they're going to get it. But even in their foreplay scenes, he was kind of awkward. You know?
So awkward.
And I was like,
they were both, I put that in my notes like 4 times. They were so awkward with each other. And that is not romance for me.
No.
Like, I would forgive awkwardness in the first quarter of the book. Maximally the first third. But after that, like, I need some, yeah, I just needed more romance if it was going to be romance. I thought McSteamy to McDreamy, I mean, I guess he was supposed to be McDreamy, but He's just, I didn't like him.
I put Jesse Strong, probably a fuck boy.
I didn't even come up with a clever one because I was just like, he's not a romantic lead for me, so I refuse.
Yeah, and even when I was trying to say like classy to nasty, this honestly
vanilla PG-13 fade to black.
Yes.
This was not.
This book would have been good for me if I was 17 years old. This would have been one of the first books I was ever reading, and this would have been tantalizing.
Or if I just was more interested in like the familial dynamics, I was more interested in the community, and I wanted the romance is fine if it's there, but that's not what I'm here for.
Yeah.
Because like if someone had recommended this book to me in that space, then I would have been reading it through a completely different idea, and I would have been fine with the fact that the romance was not the center, certainly of the first half of the book, and I would have been like, oh, okay, cool. This is just about the shop. It's about the brothers. It's about the community.
If this was fiction,
banding together.
If this was just straight
regular fiction,
and then I would have given this a much different rating. But if you tell me it's romance, you got to give me the romance.
You better give me that romance.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, to that point, that I did choose one line in the book that was sexual or about romance, just because I felt like I had to.
What is it?
My favorite line of the book was when the brothers walk in and Jesse's like, this is getting ridiculous. Jesse said, what are you all doing here? And why are you all in Kerry's doorway? And they're all just like, it's not like a typical thing where you walk in, you see someone's fucking or has just recently fucked and you're like, whoops, and walk out. They're like, they all like kind of barge in and are like, what's going on here? And they feel like that moment. I was like, oh, that's that. I wish that book was that moment where they all feel like a proprietary ownership of her as theirs. Like, no, but she's my Kerry girl. She makes me sandwiches, and she's my friend who knits with me, and she's my little sister, and she like they all feel like us. Like I wanted them all to have a separate but strong bond with her that felt each one I could define very well. Oh, he treats her like a little kid sister. He treats her like an older sister. He treats her like a mom. Yeah. And like they all have their, and like that little scene for me was like probably my favorite scene in the whole book.
And it would help in future books, right? Because Kerry is still going to be there in future books. So when Lucas gets a girlfriend, he's going to have to run it by Kerry, you know what I mean? Or she's the closest thing to a mom that they have, so they go for all their girl advice, or whatever. Like it can create it opens so many doors for different dynamics later on. I felt like the book was a missed opportunity in a lot of ways, because like there's just so many ways that the story could have gone that would have been more interesting. But yeah.
What was your favorite line? Did you have one?
I did. I picked this line because it was just relevant to me in general. It said, it had softened her towards Jesse in a way she honestly didn't want to be softened, in a way that wasn't quite safe. And so I liked that. I liked that line. That was a good one. Yeah, I like that. Like that idea of like fighting your feelings, knowing it's happening, and knowing that this is gonna hurt, or probably gonna hurt. So yeah, I liked that. My other one was, if you go and get all up in your head now and leave me to finish myself off, I'm going to kick your ass. I thought that was just funny. But also, like, basically sums up the book for me. Like, you guys are already, like, mid-fuck, and you can't even get over the awkwardness and get out of your own ways to, like, let us enjoy this with you. Yeah. I'm always super astounded by the idea that people can actually be having sex and not be able to have difficult conversation. Like... I talk all the time while I'm having sex. Not while you're having sex. I'm not talking about while. I'm saying have difficult conversations and also independently of that be having sex, right? So my sister would always be like, I would always ask guys, like, what's your credit score? What's your financial history? Like, if we're going on a date, I want to know these things, okay? And my sister would be like, Shauna, you can't ask that. And I was like, oh, I'm all about it. But his penis is going to be in my vagina. And I can't ask that? All about it. Like, that don't make any sense to me. And the fact of the matter is, if they're fucking, they should be able to have some of these uncomfortable conversations. That's just how I feel about it.
Especially once you decide that person. So, like, I've had sex with people that, like, I don't even know their last name because I don't care. I just want that D. But if it's someone that I'm intending to see more than once, and certainly someone I'm intending to have sex with long term, then that is 100% shit I bring up.
Yeah.
And, like, with my husband, when we went on our second first date before we started dating, like, or we started, so, like, he picked me up. We were supposed to go on our second first date that night because we had gone on a date. I friend zoned him for 6 months. Then he told me he was really into me, that he really wanted to date me for real. So I was like, we got to go on a proper date. There has to be touching. There has to be kissing because we have to see if, like, we already know we're best friends. We already know that shit's working. We need to make sure that the touching doesn't feel weird and, like, whatever, that's working. So he calls me at, like, 11, and he's like, what are you doing right now? a.m. And I was like, in my pajamas. I was like watching TV. And he's like, do you want to have a lunch? And I was like, is this the start of the date? Because I am not showered and not prepared to go on a date right now. And he's like, no, let's just have lunch. And so we went out to lunch. And at lunch, we like laid our whole life out. Like, where do you want to live? How many children do you want to have? Where, like, what jobs do you want? What are your ambitions? What are, like, do you have student debt? Do you have, I mean, like, every, like, you know, do you want, if we have children, do you want me to raise them without working? Do you want me to work? Do you want, like, are you willing to have babysitter? Like, we went through, like, the literal gambit of every single question that I firmly believe you should ever ask, like, and talk about certainly before you get married or something like that, but really before you enter into any, and, like, so important, because had any of those answers been like, oh, no, I don't want to have children, then we would have just stayed friends, because what's the point?
Yeah.
You know, or if any of those answers were like, oh, I really want to move to, like, small town Nebraska, I would have been like, well, that's great for you. And, like, I will perhaps one day visit you there, but I will not be living in small town Nebraska. So I am 1,000% with you. I think people should be just more nosy about the people that they are willing to put, like, penises in their mouths or vaginas in their mouths.
Yeah.
It's like, you should be willing to, you know, like, ask him, you know, hey, do you want me to be here forever? Hey, do you like your job? Like, those should seem like questions that are okay if you're willing to have their private parts on your face.
Also, like,
or in your body.
Hey, will you be my girlfriend? Like,
yeah, that seems
people
like
don't
that should
ask.
be something.
I always tell. I remember my partner now, like, he said something. I was like, oh no, I'm going on a date. He's like, what do you mean you're going on a date? We're dating. I was like, I'm not your girlfriend. He was like, well, we've been on so many dates. I was like, did you ask me? Then, dude, I ain't your girlfriend. Like,
yeah. Like, I always thought that was crazy when, like, I would be around friends or friends of friends who were like, oh yeah, like, this is so and so, and you're kind of like, cool, like, trying to figure out, like, are they, and they, like, need, like, they don't say, like, oh, this is my person, I brought them here, or this is my girlfriend, or this is my whomever.
yeah.
I always think that's so weird, because I'm like, if you're not willing to claim me, then what are we?
Then what are we doing? And why am I meeting your people?
Like, I met his parents, my husband's parents, a week after we officially started. That day, we went on our date, our first date. The next day, boyfriend and girlfriend, he was like, I want you to be my girlfriend. Lock that shit down. Met his parents a week later. Like, he was like, I've got you now. I'm not letting you go.
He was not letting you go, Bridget. He was like, locked and loaded.
Yeah, he's like, married me like a year and a half later, like, knocked me up. Just kidding. We did it on purpose, but technically he did knock me up. So I am with you. You better ask. You better tell me in no uncertain terms. I'm going to tell you in no uncertain terms. Because I've had people in the reverse who I was like, yo, like, we've been dating now for like a month. It's going pretty good. Like, I would like to be dating you exclusively. I would like to be doing that thing.
Yeah.
And I've had people who are like, that's dope, let's do that. And I've had people who are like, I don't want to date exclusively. And like, in either direction, that's fine. But, like, I need to know that. So, like, that needs to be, like, I don't want to, keep being ambiguous. So, Shawnee, what was your favorite review? Tell the people.
So my favorite review, I kind of paraphrased it. I didn't keep everything that she wrote, but it comes from Stephanie on Goodreads. It says,
okay,
I have to admit that I wanted to like this book much more than I actually did. The synopsis sounded cute, and I liked that there was a diverse cast. I was looking forward to some fun and family dynamics between the brothers as well. Unfortunately, I found everything that happened really lackluster. I wasn't very impressed with the writing, though it did get better as it went on. The first couple chapters were extremely heavy on the internal monologues that set up the story and was massive info dump of characters and circumstances. I would have liked to have seen things start out a little more naturally and get to know the characters in a more authentic way. After 2 chapters, I almost decided to DNF, which I'm assuming means
Do not
finish it, since I knew I couldn't take a whole book written in this way. However, I kept reading, and it got a little better. Overall, Roman Knit left me underwhelmed. I really wanted to like it, but poor character development and writing style I didn't connect with kept me from really enjoying it. There were a few funny moments or cute moments, but they were few and far between to make up for the rest of the story. While the book wasn't for me, I'm sure there will be some others that can overlook these issues and will enjoy the romance. And that sums up how I felt. Like, yeah, this book wasn't for me. However, I do think that there is an audience that would like this, but I think that they would, the books I read when I was a bit more of an immature reader, and by immature I mean younger, and at this point I've read so many books, I'm very picky about what I like, but this book would have flown for me when I was 17. I would have thought like, oh, this is so cute, or whatever, or 16 or 17. So I just think I think she has some growth to do as an author, but also pick the right category. You might not be a romance author. You might be, a fiction or a young adult romance author. Yeah.
My review is from Bethany on Goodreads. She gave it 2 stars. She said, I really wanted to love this one. Some great things in there. Ultimately fell a bit flat. In a nutshell, this first book had too much telling rather than showing, and a hero I just wasn't rooting for. And you know what? It sums it up.
Yep.
It sums it up for me.
Accurate.
So thank you for that review, Bethany. What do you think, Shani? Worth the read?
Not for me. Like, I again, if you're a young adult, then yes, it's worth the read. It would be cute for somebody who is younger. However, for an advanced romance reader who wants some sexiness in their books and that sort of thing, then I would say no. It's not worth the read. It was frustrating.
Yeah, if you're expecting this to be a romance, don't read it. If you are interested in the community and familial aspect, I could see where you would like this book. Quite honestly, if we weren't reviewing this for the podcast, I would definitely not have finished this book. I really struggled to get through the first 4 or 5 chapters. I had to restart. I think I told you I had to restart the first page like 4 or 5 times.
Same.
And I was trying to figure out, before I talked to you, I was like, is this maybe it's just like a way of speaking that I'm just not used to. I have to get into the flow of it. And I was talking to you, and I was like, oh, maybe I wonder if it's just me or if Shani has the same problem. Not that obviously you're from Harlem nor have lived there ever, but yeah, it was just unfortunately not what I was hoping for. But I did give it 2 stars. If it was in a different genre, I might have given it 3, perhaps. But because I was expecting romance, it was a 2-star for me.
Yeah, I said the same thing. One, I had to restart the book a couple times as well. I think I rewound it probably like 5 times. And I also gave it 2 stars. And I said if it were a different genre, I probably would have given it 3 as well. So yes.
Shani, I am so impressed that we are giving the exact same scores across the board.
I know, it's crazy because we don't talk about this ahead of time.
That almost never happens. Except for like maybe like John Matthew and Zach's, where we were like 5 star, 5 star, 5 star. But I don't feel like we typically are. I mean, usually it's like one of our heroines or heroes are higher, or like one of us will rate the book higher or lower.
Yeah, we rarely agree.
Across the board today. Of course.
Yeah, and we listeners, we don't talk about the book until we get on the podcast. If one of us pretends to start talking about it, we're like, no. Save it for the podcast.
Save it.
So we don't coordinate our answers at all.
Yes. Yes.
But yeah, I'm like shocked. I'm like, oh my God, did we agree on everything? Our hero, heroine, and the rating of the book and everything.
It's a whole new podcast, everyone.
It's a whole new day. It's a whole new
world.
But
I've been watching a lot of Disney in quarantine.
I saw on your stories. First of all, what you said about the Beast, I agree. So Bridget the other day said, wasn't the Beast in Beauty and the Beast hotter as a beast than he was as a man? And absolutely, like 7-year-old Shawnee, when he transformed, was like, ugh, bring back the Beast.
I was
okay.
Disgusted. I was so furious.
The Beast was one of my first like crushes.
Beast was hot.
As a kid. And it's funny because like in kink I'm considered a primal, which makes total sense because I had a crush on the Beast. I had a crush on the Undertaker in WWF, and I had a crush on Tarzan. So
Tarzan, the fucking Simba, Aladdin. Aladdin's not primal, but I always liked either the funny ones or essentially the animal characters.
I like the animalistic energy of it, and it's never changed.
Yeah.
So, all right, dear listeners, until next time, may your books be your lover
and your hand your best friend.
Thanks for hanging in with us, romance readers. Head over to Instagram to continue chatting with us. We're super friendly. We want to cackle with you. We want to know what your favorite sex scene was. And we need more book recommendations. If you want to read along with us, go to our website, romanceataglance.com, to see what we're reading next. And we'll see you next podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Subscribe to our channel to get new episodes, clips, and more.
And click here to watch our previous reviews and author interviews.